There's something strange about food in America right now. We've turned it into spectacle, into identity, into performance. We line up for reservations we can barely afford. We take photos of meals we haven't even tasted yet. We talk about food like it's art, but sometimes forget that it's supposed to feed us. And that's exactly where today's film, The Menu, begins. Because this isn't really a movie about food, it's a movie about power, about class, about who gets to sit at the table, and who never even gets invited in the first place. It's about a world where a chef becomes a god, where diners perform sophistication, and where taste becomes something you prove rather than something you enjoy. And to unpack all of that, I've got two of my favorite thinkers joining me today. Two people who have been part of this podcast since the very beginning. Emily Contois is a media studies scholar at the University of Tulsa, whose work explores how food, identity, gender, and power collide in modern culture. And Mark Johnson is a historian at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, whose work on food, especially in the American South, reveals how what we eat tells us who we are and who we think we are. Together, they help us see what's really going on beneath the surface of this film. Because The Menu isn't just satire. It's a critique of a world where food has become a performance, where authenticity is suspect, and where, somewhere along the way, we may have forgotten why we love food in the first place. And maybe, just maybe, the most honest thing in the entire film is a cheeseburger. I'm Jason Herbert, and this is A Reckoning. My name is Jason Herbert. I'm a Southerner who lives in the West. I'm a historian, an outdoorsman, and a movie buff. I like finding new answers to old questions, and this is A Reckoning. Welcome back. For those of you listening in now, we've actually been going. We've been enjoying technology this entire time, and actually in more ways than once. We're teasing Mark a little bit about getting going. Mark, I'm digging your shirt; it's nice. But also, Emily and I enjoying the technology to get caught up because this is the first time you guys have been back on the pod in like 3 years. And Emily, Mark, you guys were two of the first people ever on this pod, so thank you for the early faith and welcome back. So I'm so happy to have you here.
We knew this was going to be a hit. We're both so happy to be back.
Well, I'm glad that you're here.
Awesome.
Yes. And we want you back for many, many things because I love you guys' work and you guys as well. Every time I see you guys posting on social media, I always get excited, mostly because I like seeing pictures of your dog, Emily, and the stuff that you're doing. It's so much fun. Anyway, hey, by the way, Emily, do you know Julie Reed over at University of Tulsa? Have you met her yet?
She just came. I saw her job talk, but she's been on fellowship, so I will become best friends with her when she's back on campus.
Okay, I'll tell her. I'll message her. I'm like, hey, I have a friend for you. She's like, wait, what?
A friend recommendation.
Right. I was like, that's what I do now. I'm just a friend maker. Anyway, all right, let's get into this because I haven't wanted to talk to you guys for the longest time. I wanted to have you back. I have to tell you, Emily, so we were just in Vancouver recently, and we're going to get into this, but you were like, when I sent you show notes, you're like, oh, Jason, you did your homework. I swear to you, some of the things you have written have stuck with me so freaking much about like camera and food and like masculinity. And like, you've ruined my time in the kitchen because now I'm in my own damn head. Every time I'm like, hey, look at me. And I can't see Guy Fieri anymore without thinking about you. So there's that. But
do people give you Guy Fieri things?
When I was first writing the book, yes. Like I have a t-shirt, I have a Christmas ornament. People can send me more stuff. Like it never gets old. Like that stuff always cracks me up.
All right, good. If people listening in, send Emily things, but make them polite. All right, let's do this. You guys want to introduce yourselves back to the pod? There's a whole bunch of stuff written on the podcast page now. But Emily, do you want to say who you are and like your work and stuff like that?
Yeah, sure thing. My name is Emily Contois. I'm an associate professor of media studies at the University of Tulsa, and my work broadly studies food, bodies, ideas about health, and how they tell stories about our identities. So gender is the piece the story about our identities that I'm often studying. And then media and broader consumer culture are the texts that I can never get enough of. So my first book was called Diners, Dudes, and Diets. It was all about masculinity throughout our food media ecosystem. My second book was a co-edited collection called Food Instagram. So that was the first time I was on the pod when we were talking about Chef, which is a really great episode. The last time we went to Vegas, we saw the chef truck that's a part of the movie. And I had to send Jason a text and just like, oh my gosh, it's here. So it's amazing to be back. Jason and I have thought a lot about meat, about masculinity, about cooking, about what food looks like. And the book that I'm writing right now is tentatively called Like an Athlete. And so I'm interested in how these ideas about elite athleticism have trickled down into our everyday consumer culture. So why are all of us feeling the pressure to hydrate, to eat lots of protein, to take supplements, to have a coach, to practice sports psychology, right? All things that I will now make Jason feel, self-conscious about and sort of, think about our own lives. So I'm always interested in the stuff around us. What does this mean? Why does it matter? How did we get here? And then Mark, we're in like the best writing group ever. So please tell us about you.
Yeah, so I'm an assistant professor of history in the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. I'm the author of 2 previous books, An Irresistible History of Alabama Barbecue, which Jason despises, and Rough Tactics, Black Performance, and Political Spectacle. And as of April 15th, my second academic monograph and third book overall, American Bacon, The History of a Food Phenomenon,
Woo-hoo!
which Emily revealed herself as a reviewer in her secret phase. And I'm very glad to now have her in my writing group and count her among my friends. So yes. I am interested in the cultural history of performance and identity. Is something that does connect all my work, even though it seems really far afield. And at UTC, I do teach a broad range of courses in U.S. history, Reconstruction, Civil War memory, Jim Crow, African American history, and then U.S. food history.
So much stuff, Mark. And like, for you guys listening in, Mark's going to come back on. We're going to do a special book, think just for American bacon as well. And Emily, obviously for your book, because you're like all these supplements, and I'm literally sitting here with my bottle of water, and there's a kettlebell like 3 feet away from me right now. Like, I don't know what to make of you. I feel like sometimes you're like, I know you, Jason.
I do so well.
So bad. I am so excited to talk to you guys about your work. I think you guys both know how much I love your work. I talk about it a lot, actually, and not always negatively, Mark, even though you like Alabama white sauce. But also because, like, I think the stuff that you guys are commenting on really matters. We talk about food and all these things, and the second we sit down with like this performative aspect of our lives, which brings us to this film. And of all the food movies we could have chosen, you guys chose The Menu. And I'm wondering why this one. Mark, I think, was this your idea? Like who picked this one?
Yeah, I chose it because the students love it.
Really? You teach it?
I do not teach it, but I guess I teach it because they bring it up when we touch on certain themes in the class. I think there's something about The Menu that makes its thesis a little too obvious, and that makes it a really useful teaching tool. Right away, the first scene helps us understand things like culinary capital and cultural capital and the way people belong or do not belong in certain spaces. So I think, it has some very sometimes too obvious ways to get ideas across. Right away, it positions Tyler and Margot against each other and against everyone else. I think students are constantly bringing it up in such a way that I had to finally watch it, even though I'm really scared of most things. But Emily assured me that I would not be scared. So I watched it and I was not. And I would say I liked it, but didn't love it.
Yeah, I saw this movie when it came out in 2022. We didn't go to the theater, but we watched it pretty soon afterward. And intellectually, I loved it from the get-go. Like, I like the satire. I like the critique that it's bringing to so many different aspects of fine dining, of food culture, chef hagiography, right? Of just the worship of the chef hero figure, the role of foodies, the role of pretentious food critics. There are these multiple scenes where they're just sort of testing out the language they're going to use when they write about it. And I could kind of relate to it, right? Of like, I literally teach students, right? How do we write about flavor? How do we think about, words to use to describe food? And so there's some pieces of it that are reflected back at me as someone who loves food and who thinks we should think about food. I think on one level, the film maybe pushes us away from thinking about food deeply, that it should just be about love and flavor and fun. I think food's a lot more complex than that and maybe deserves more than that. But I loved this film. My husband hated it. He thought it repeats sort of the pretentiousness of the fine dining. Like it felt really icky to him. And he didn't think any of these, 1% elite figures who are all the diners who are at the restaurant that night, he doesn't think they're quite evil enough to deserve the ends that they're brought to. Well, I'm kind of fine with finance bros and, the really, really, wealthy guy who's been there 11 times and can't name a single dish they've ever eaten. Like some of the just desserts felt pretty sweet to me. But no, really enjoyed a second watch. I did a third watch. So I'd be nice and prepared. So we have lots to dig into and talk about.
So you brought up a question I know Jason asked the questions, but I'm asking the question.
I'm just here.
Do you end up sympathizing with any of them? Do you want any of them to avoid their fate?
No. And I think part of it is because I read a whole bunch of reviews too of going back to when this came out of what people thought about this movie, and critics for the most part were pretty impressed with it and liked it, in part because of who's directing, right? It's on the heels of Succession. They like this sort of biting critique of the 1%, and it's pretty witty dialogue. Things move quickly. But I think what's interesting is because I've seen it multiple times, as you watch this film on your first watch, you don't know exactly what you're in for and who knows what at what moments and where we're ultimately going to end up. So there's moments where at the beginning you think our protagonist foodie is maybe just an earnest, awkward, food-loving guy, right? We find out so much more about him and find out that he's one of the most despicable people in the dining room as we continue on. There's moments where you feel for the chef hero, right? Of the food that he loved as a young person to cook, the food that he became famous for, and then where he feels like he's gotten to. I had sympathy for that. And maybe because we should, total spoiler alert, everyone, if you haven't watched this, go watch it first, because I don't think we can talk about it without, ruining the ending. But I think that's where I have some sympathy for the chef character, that I think the film is a critique of those kinds of chefs. But the fact that he goes along with the plan and the whole concept of the menu, and he dies too, right? He's literally blowing up this livelihood that he made, this whole thing he's dedicated his life to. And so in that, but I don't know, it makes us be quite happy to see a lot of people meet their ends. And burgers, right? Burgers are a big part of this.
The burgers are good,
so.
Right?
Yeah.
I was kind of like the Judith Light character. She's like, if just everyone seems to, by the end of the film, accept their fate. And I'm like, but John Leguizamo.
In fact,
right?
Yeah, at the end, one of them says thank you as they're roasting.
The wife who's been betrayed.
Yeah.
And, no, hers. Well, they all almost accept it. It's funny that we're jumping right to the end. But
desserts first, Emily.
Yes, well, it's almost a spiritual experience, right? When he says it is through fire that we will be reborn, we will be transformed, we can create anew, and all of them, right, through the course of this meal, have had to face horrible things they've done,
atone for their sins.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure what the actor's assistant's guilty of, except for being rich.
Yes,
well, she stole some money.
Well, I guess from him,
from her actor,
yes.
from John Leguizamo.
That I feel like we can forgive. Yeah, the idea that she went to Brown and had no
Because,
debt, right? This assumption that like her parents
yeah,
paid, like that one.
like
Yeah,
he's almost looking for a reason to let her go.
she seems the
And then
least
he asks
guilty
her,
of them
"Where
all.
did you go, Brown?" And then he's like, "One more chance. Yeah, a debt free or."
I know, which kind of hurt as someone who got my PhD there and was very lucky to not have any debt from it. I'm just like, I would be burned at the stake. Like, I have too much in common with the foodie, right? The foodie, the food writer, and the one who went to Brown. And so, no, I wouldn't make out of this either. So I thought it was so interesting.
Can I tell you, Emily, as I was watching this and they said the Brown thing, and I knew obviously with the three of us were going to do this, and I knew that you had gone to Brown, and I guffawed sitting on my couch, wondering how we were going to tackle the topic of Brown University and the upper crust elite. I have a question for the two of you. The two of you speak a lot about your work, what we see on television. I think the very first time, Emily, before I'd even met you, I'd seen you on television talking before. And I'm kind of wondering, so you guys do a lot of engaging with the public, and I'm wondering, are there popular misconceptions that you hear about the American food scene or American relationships with food when you're out and about and you talk about your work?
I think when I thought about this question of this idea of like, what is American food? I actually taught a course a couple of times. It was having students try and answer that question over the course of a semester. Like, what is American food? What would be the key words or the hallmark dishes or the histories or like, what would you put on a board and say, this is what American food is? That it's a lot more complex than so many other nations. And that it can't be reduced to just the hamburger and particularly the fast food hamburger. But the fact that that dish plays such a big role in this film. Some of you know, like a hamburger is literally, the big icon image on the cover of my first book, right? Like burgers have actually meant quite a lot sort of throughout my career. And as people reviewed the book, like burger was always this image when we think about masculinity, when we think about national strength of this country, like burgers stand in a lot. But I guess maybe the biggest thing is, right, is like people often don't want to think about the layers of meaning attached to food. The idea that food, ingredients, appetites, dishes, ways of cooking have something to do with gender, for example, like that's still so foreign to some people. So I think with that, I'll toss it to Mark because like his book does a really smart job of thinking about various categories of identities. We think about bacon across different historical time periods and think about how its meaning changes over time. Yeah, bacon, yum, 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 yum. Although Ruby kind of looks like a potbelly pig, so I've stopped eating pig as much as possible. So like I hardly ever have bacon anymore because she looks like brethren.
I think because I live in the U.S. South now, I face a lot of misconceptions about food and Southern food and what it means to people. And mostly, I just am interested in pushing back against some of the myths about some Southern food. That it's kind of pre-industrial or that it's it's romantic and the way there's nostalgia around it. And I mean, I'm just looking around me and I just see Coca-Cola and Pepsi and Krispy Kreme and Chick-fil-A. Like this is as much, Southern food as, the grits from the mill down the road, which I've never seen or, never heard of. So I think there are misconceptions. I think we talked at a conference a few of us were standing around and talking about Southern food exceptionalism as the last remnant of the lost cause, a way to portray the South as pastoral and pre-industrial and therefore washed of the problems of modernity. And it's something honest, right? In comparison to New York, overwrought cuisine or French haute cuisine or the molecular gastronomy on play in the menu. The pork chop and the cornbread in the sizzling cast iron skillet seem honest. And putting that forward, I think Southern exceptionalism tends to lead us to some pretty dark places. So I'm still trying to work out what exactly that means in the food scene.
That's funny, Mark, because I was just debating. My girlfriend grew up in New Orleans. I grew up in Breaux for a time, both in Louisiana. We were like an hour and a half apart from each other. And she's like, "You're from Kentucky. You're not Cajun." I was like, "No, no, no, no. There's an Aviar aspect to this name, and I will stand on a pile of etouffee as I argue over this. So much about food is identity. Emily, as you've talked about, and people get really, really defensive of this. I'm wondering though, as I'm watching here, because we're just out of the country just recently, up in Vancouver, looking around. We're having some amazing food. One of the best plates I've ever had in my life, up on Vancouver Island just recently. This place called Wolf in the Fog. I died when I had this rockfish up there, and I'm out there, and I've got pictures and I'm doing the thing with my camera, and Emily, you're in my head, and blah blah blah. But I'm wondering, do other nations have the same relationship with food as the United States? Is it simple? Like, what are you seeing, on a global scale? Do all countries like celebrate food like we do here, or are we behind the ball? Like, where are we here on a global level?
Oh, I think if anything, like there are cultures who celebrate it far more than us.
France.
Yeah, France, Italy, on and on and on. There'd be a million different examples, not just in Europe, of course. But I think like what we learned editing the food Instagram book, right, was that it was an international set of contributors. And so there were examples from all over the world as we thought about how and why, right? People were using their smartphones to interact with their food, to not just represent beautiful food, but were helping to construct and hold up and reinforce and repeat sometimes systems of inequity that shape the food systems as they are. So I think there's definitely a global component to thinking about the social media mediation of our experiences with food and that enthusiasm for it. But I think food, like it's definitely in, our hierarchy of needs that you have to eat. But then there can also be so much pleasure in it. It's a space for such cultural connection, as well as cultural conflict can also play out in really fascinating ways through food, that it is a distinctly, if not universalizing, like distinctly global phenomenon for sure.
Yeah, I think it's actually a truly American thing to not care about your food. As a historian, I'm going to take the story back as far as I can go. But I mean, in the wake of the American Revolution, the idea was to avoid European corruption, avoid European decadence, and that the civilizations via France, but also Great Britain, had become, too decadent, too corrupt, too overwrought, over civilized. So I think we do inherit from like our Puritan tradition, an idea that food should fuel us and nothing more, and that we've been skeptical of food as a pleasure for a very long time. I mean, I just taught, Graham and Kellogg and those people in my class a few weeks ago, that good tasting food is seductive, and they mean that in the sexual way, right? That you'll eat good food and want to do dirty things with people around you. And I see it today, right? With the slot bowl lunch, that's such a part of our culture right now, to eat at your desk, to not care, to glamorize the grind and glamorize the humility of it all.
I gotta chime in here, Mark, because you're just talking about the seductiveness of food. Emily, I think you know exactly where I'm going to go here. I'm thinking immediately about Rachel Hope Cleaves' book, Lustful Appetites, which is phenomenal. If people haven't read it yet, she was on like a year ago to talk about that book. It's so good, and talking exactly about like that revolutionary world, like this real American lack of relationship with food. Right? When does this ever start to change? Because I can't imagine not falling in love with food. I've always wanted to talk about food, where it's coming from and what you can do with it. Like, is that just me as a historian wanting to trace the ancestry of everything back?
I mean, I think when we think about like foodie culture and sort of a growing like cosmopolitan to American dining, more exposure, like people, point to 1965 and changing, immigration tactics in the United States, right? Of diversifying who was here, the cuisines they brought, the recipes they brought, the restaurants they opened, led to, right, a far more interesting and delicious food culture. I think people point to the travel of GIs during World War II, more accessible airline travel following World War II for middle class people to be able to explore the world, to be able to see what it's like to eat other places, to be exposed to food different than perhaps they grew up with in their families or towns or cities. That those are other. So the latter half of the 20th century is where we see some of these changes start to come about. In the 70s and 80s is where we start to see the beginnings, right, of what we would recognize as a food culture. Is very reminiscent of where we are today. But going back to our movie, like the role of the celebrity chef, the chef as hero, the chef as savior, the chef as, someone who intellectually, a media profile, all these things, like that's really more recent, right? Like a lot of people point, to Bourdain and the turn into the 2000s, right? It's in the 90s, in part because of Food Network, bringing food into all, many, many, many American homes. Like it was still a cable network, of course, but this idea that chefs were no longer imagined as blue collar workers in the back of the house who you would never want to talk to celebrities and rock stars and people who, like in this film, right? Like, oh, does he hate me? Right? Like wanting to be, wanting to shake the chef's hand or to say, my compliments to, thank you for this beautiful meal, to be able to be a part of that experience, right? Like experience is really important for this film. But that role of the chef, like we are dealing with a much more recent phenomenon in the United States where we think about chefs taking on that social role, cultural role, mediated role.
Can I tell you quickly, when we were at this restaurant, Wolf in the Fog, like the food was so good, and I wanted to like go say hi to the chef. I was like, "No, it's stupid. I don't want to bother him."
I think one of the things that I would say about the American foodie revolution is to, plug my friend's work, Margot Finn's work on discriminating taste.
Totally agree. I mean, she goes back to the Victorians, right? Like more Gilded
Yeah,
Age. Yeah.
He points out that America has like foodie revolutions at times in which class anxiety is at its highest.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Gilded Age, and now, right, we toss around the second Gilded Age quite a bit these days.
Yeah, good point.
And so to see this movie at a time in which maybe we are thinking about the United States as overwrought, over-corrupt, decadent, and maybe indulgent. When Emily and I had a brief conversation ahead of this, right, she mentioned eating the rich, right, a phrase that goes around a little bit quite often right now. I think the idea is that food, out of all of the things that people can use to distinguish themselves from one another, Ferraris and mansions and penthouses, food's the most accessible.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, even this meal, it's outrageous. Okay, I need to say that first, right? They're paying more than $1,000, but it sounds like about $1,000 each to have this meal. But comparing that to, like a sports car or a mansion, that is in the realm of possibility for a much larger segment of the population. Before we were talking about Disney. By the way, I got married at Disney, Jason.
Disney wedding
at the Grand Flow. Where at?
The Canada Pavilion by the waterfall.
I know it well. I know. And for the record, for my best friend Kate's listening to this right now, I know when you go to the World Showcase, you always start in Mexico and you end in Canada. She starts in Canada. It's wrong. You always take a left. Go ahead. Keep going, Mark.
So anyway, but I was thinking about that, like the once in a lifetime trip to Disney World is within the realm of so many Americans, and increasingly less. I think they're trying to rebrand as luxury, but so I'm trying to say that this dinner at the menu is within the grasp of a lot more people than other markers of refinement or taste. And I even think that's what's going on with Tyler, our seemingly main character. I get the sense that he's not as well off as the other people at the dinner. The politician, I assume he's a politician, and his wife have gone 11 times. The tech bros can go whenever they want and they don't care. They care so little that they can just get wasted before the meal, right? It doesn't even matter what it actually ends up tasting like. The actor, right, can go, so he takes this seriously because this is a once in a lifetime thing. So I don't think of him as a 1%, but he has to then prove that he belongs with the cultural capital. right? He has to prove he belongs because he understands it, he appreciates it, he knows the language, and he needs the chef to like him. The other people probably don't, but he does. So yeah, I think our foodie revolution is a testament to our class anxiety right now.
No, I think that's all really well taken. I think the point about how much this meal costs, right? Like in the film, it's $12.50 a head, which resonates now for two reasons, right? Like as we look at this film and the way it holds up the chef in the center of it, this restaurant's very much modeled after Noma, right? Coming out of Copenhagen, and Chef Rene Redzepi, who recently, right, had to step down from his restaurant because there was another media frenzy about, the horrendous ways he'd managed his restaurant, treated his employees, and the kind of toxically masculine chef managerial behavior that the entire industry has been critiqued for, of, yelling, emotional manipulation, pushing people, right? Like really horrible ways of conducting himself. But for the pop-up of Noma that is in LA right now, right? Like it was about to open when all the protests happened and when he had to step down to ensure it would continue, that's $1,500 a head in Los Angeles. And so thinking about for whom is that entertainment, for whom is that a dream meal that you save up and want to have this once in a lifetime best meal of your life, that I think that's a really interesting sort of, it isn't so outlandish. Like we literally have one that costs more than that happening right now. A chef very much who's being modeled after in this film. But it also makes me think of another panel that I was on once where the food writer pointed out that to go to something not this expensive, right, but to spend $300 on a meal, right? Like people who don't care about food or think fine dining is just ridiculous, like really look down on that, right? As like these are, truly pretentious, pompous people spending their money on stupid things. And I remember her pointing out that like we don't bat an eye that you would spend that much to go see a concert, to go see professional sports, right? Like all these other areas of American consumer popular culture that we think are worth, right, this big price tag. And so thinking about food again of, how much good food does cost. And part of the problem, again, with Noma was like running on all of these interns who were not paid, right? Like the bottom line of Noma was only possible because of the exploitation of its workers. And so just to bring a couple other layers to like Mark's really excellent points there, thinking about class anxiety, how much these meals cost, and sort of how that isn't just in the world of the satirical film, but very much in our own real world right now.
I think this plays a role with the emergence of bacon in fine dining. If I may.
Please.
Plug.
Because it's, in a way, it's a reaction to the type of food on display in the menu, the the molecular gastronomy. And I think there's also, they're hinting at things like the California cuisine, right? The way that it's all sourced on the island, right? It's all sourced within a couple miles of here. We have our own farms.
The scallops are being heard right there.
Yeah, so I think the emergence of like the Southern fine dining or the self-styled Southern fine dining as a he just held up a sign, pancetta for life. Yeah, so I think what's going on is to put food that looks like food on people's plates, but still be able to charge at a price point that Emily just brought up. I mean, I'm going to admit it. When the book comes out, I have my release party here in Knoxville, and we're going right next door to this place called J.C. Holdway, which is absolutely incredible. And it will cost a few $100s, and it will be, steaks and pork chops and smoked wings with Alabama white sauce, and Benton's bacon pasta. And I think that's a way to get these people that are suspicious of the fine dining, like Emily was talking, right? This food is pretentious. This food is too pompous. This food is overworked. Right, centrifuges and liquid nitrogen, and tweezers.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
They bring up the tweezers. It's over tweezed.
They do a good
or
job
something like
parodying the
that.
tweezers.
Yeah.
In course 4, where it's the suicide, he has these tweezers like on his apron, like a businessman would have his pen in his pocket, like they were just so prominently displayed. Like, no, the tweezers are so on the nose and very obvious, but like also so perfect of like how it represents this type of cuisine.
Yeah, so I think for people that are suspicious of all that, something about a pork chop coming out in a cast iron skillet,
Yeah.
even though it might cost the same as, let's say this $200, $300 meal, seems honest. And so I think this gets at what, Johnston and Bauman in their foodies book called the
Mm-hmm.
democracy distinction dialectic, right? Like I'm eating this humble food, this poor people food, because I'm a man of the people, or I'm a salt of the earth type, but still at a price point that puts it out of reach for so many of these people.
Well, going back to Tyler, I think, Emily, you're on this here, which is like, we don't just go to these restaurants for the food just because the chefs or the cooks in the back are making the best version of whatever it is we're eating. In some cases, like so much of this, obviously, we're talking about class all day long on this conversation. But like in the aspect of Tyler, or like say myself, when I go to Coyote Cafe down in Santa Fe, New Mexico, right? And we show up there, and I'm sitting there like a little boy in the table, and I'm looking around at who else is there. How are they dressed? I'm a big boy now. I'm sitting here at a real restaurant, right? There is a real performance aspect of like, look, I made it. Or I'm trying to climb this level and almost even try to remind myself that, oh no, I'm capable of doing this. I'm like growing up in like Western Kentucky, you don't like going to Olive Garden or Red Lobster was a big deal to my people, right? And
Mm-hmm.
still kind of is, right?
Yes, we were talking about Lawton, Oklahoma, where my husband
Right.
grew up, right? Like to be a place that had an Olive Garden, you
Thank you.
existed, right? There are so many
Right.
cities in America where they are these like anthropologically non-place kind of restaurants. They don't define you geographically, culturally at all. But to be big enough that you had those kinds of chain restaurants was a sign of a particular kind of distinction.
Absolutely, right? And then you go into these restaurants. Now I'm wondering if he knows about Mears. I was talking about the burgers over there too.
Oh yeah, no, we've been to Mears.
So big. Anyway, yeah, we'll come back to Mears when we get together in October. But so there's this real aspect of like proving that you belong into a room by the ability to like scrape together the funds, even if like I can't throw around money like the politician can or the actor can. I can get in the room this one time. Like I'm ascending this level, and that's what these places allow. They are spaces where we can perform our self-value or self-worth, as silly as that might sound, just by sitting down at the table, quite literally having space at the table, right? I mean, that's what it feels like to me as I watch this film.
Oh, absolutely. And I think some of it too, of like knowing what fork to use or knowing that they're going to reset your place setting with every course, right? Like knowing those things and being able to perform. Like, I think that's part of why I love like restaurants that are doing really interesting food that's really innovative and they're getting nominated for awards, but where they don't make you feel like you don't know what you're supposed to do. Like the second course here, right? Like definitely has this beautiful scallop on top, but then it like has a rock and it has these different plants that are sort of added to it, and it's like, how am I supposed to eat this, right? Like the idea of like some food being presented in a way that like it makes it difficult to ask questions. It makes it difficult to sort of engage with it. This is making me think about what Mark was saying too. Like I've done a little bit of research on how politicians perform their identity and try to relate to constituencies through food on the campaign trail.
Oh, sure.
And so when people go to different cities, right, you have to know how to order your Philly cheesesteak, correctly. Like I remember one candidate, right, who tried to eat fried chicken with knife and fork, right? Like, I mean, Trump, right, like ate pizza with knife and fork, right? Like these ways that you don't demonstrate class on the upper end or the more accessible end, that food is this way for sure. But no, I think that's one of the things that can keep people out of these kinds of like feeling like you don't know what you're supposed to do. And then I think the kind of hospitality that we see portrayed in this film, right, where like they know your name, they know about you, right? But in this particular setting, it's to skewer you for these evil things that you've done. It makes me think of the similar depictions in The Bear, of what it's like to work at a fine dining restaurant where they're going to know you're coming, they know your reservation, they know your birthday or where you're from or why you're here, and then they deliver something incredibly special and meaningful and poignant, and it's just this emotional culminating moment, right, every single time it happens. That can be a part of this, but we don't see that sort of loving hospitality here at all, even in the beginning when it seems like they're selling something that everyone sitting down at the tables wants. But Mark, I saw you thinking.
I'm thinking right now, and I'm wondering how the hell haven't we talked about the bear on this podcast yet? Now it's another spot where I'm kicking myself. Let me guys ask you this, because now we've been talking for the better part of whatever it is. I'm ready for our second question.
Sorry, friends.
No, I love this is why I love you guys so much, because we just get going here. And these are the best conversations when I literally just take the skit and I go, we throw it out and just get going on this. And that's what I love. To deconstruct the film, if you will, right? What are your favorite scenes in this film? When you were going back watching this, either for the first time, Mark, this was also my first time watching the film, so right there with you, pal. Or Emily, when you've watched it several times, are there particular scenes when you're watching this going, God, I love what they're doing here, and this is why this speaks to me?
I went straight to the bread scene.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm happy to talk about another one as
go
well.
with bread.
I think it's the first scene that really shows us that he hates them. It's one of our first, as far as I could tell, religious scenes too. There's a lot of religious imagery, as we said earlier. Oh yeah, I was going to say, at the end, when they're dying, they're not wearing crown of thorns, they're wearing crowns of chocolate. And it melts down their faces like the Passion of the Christ. Anyway.
I read them as dunce caps, but I like yours better.
I thought of dunce caps until it melted and it was going down their faces. I was thinking about... Anyway, so the bread scene. It's the first scene that testifies that he hates them. He says, but you, my dear guests, are not the common man, right? So tonight you get no bread. And I think that phrasing is really important. You get no bread. He's like, they're not above bread. They get no bread. They don't even deserve bread. And that gets more and more poignant to me as I watched it then the second time to study again. And then as you then know where it goes, that they are undeserving. And that's why I think also elsewhere he says something like that, or the hostess says, right, you will get less than you desire, but more than you deserve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well done. That was good.
So the you get no bread really hits home for me. And in a world, theoretically, where everyone should feel not entitled, but a right to their daily bread, right? Chef Slowick does not think that they should get it. And I was thinking about how, given their wealth, how many of them have deprived their so-called common man of their daily bread. We have the tech bros, but we also have the restaurant critic who has put all these other places out of business.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler, the way he speaks to Margot in the movie, as an undeserving sort of person. So yeah, I think we all deserve bread except for these people.
That was on my list too. I'm so glad that you took that one. I think the one that I'll go to is the scene where the chef makes the burger for Margot. She's stood up. She's trying to delay their deaths or to save herself, and tells him that she doesn't like his food. She wants to send it back. She's still hungry. She wants to order something that's actually going to satisfy her and that's actually going to show, right, that he's the chef of the prestige that he deserves to be acknowledged and known as. And she asks him for a cheeseburger, and not a fancy deconstructed one. She doesn't want, anything gastronomic that way. She wants a cheeseburger. And I think part of the reason she's asking for it is because she's had this insight into Chef by being able to be in his private quarters and see these photographs on the wall. And one of them is of him as employee of the month when he's a very young guy. And he's happy. He's smiling in a way that you don't see him all throughout this film. Ralph Fiennes performs this character so well with this really, really tight upper lip. It's sort of always folded over his teeth. So there's a stiltedness to how he's performing his face and how he gives all these monologues about each course. And so when she asks him for the burger, I think I love it for all the reasons we've talked about, what the burger symbolizes. But I also love it for how I argue this is the only food film scene in the whole movie. This
Mhm.
is a movie about food. This is you see lots of food being prepared in the kitchen. We see it being served. We see lovely overhead shots. We see a crazy overhead shot where the entire dining room, becomes the plate when they're making the s'mores out of the people with, sort of the all the dressing that you'd have on a dessert plate. But with the burger scene, like this is where we see the food fill the screen. We see the sumptuous shots of the meat hitting the grill and the cheese on top of it. When he plates everything and then squishes down the burger and you get the juices running out. It reminds me actually a lot, Jason, of the scene in Chef that we talked so much about, where he's cooking
Grilled
the
cheese.
grilled cheese for his son, or he does it again for Scarlett Johansson's character. That like he's actually putting love into this burger, right? She said, "You don't know how to do this anymore," and he kind of does it, right? And like you can sense that he wants her to like it. There's this moment where he does give a little smile when she does, like, "That's a burger," right, and gives him the $10 bill, and then he lets her free. That it's this sort of denouement, right? Like with the supplemental unplanned course before the s'mores, which was also my other one. They're in these like straight jacket marshmallow cowls that are sort of put on each of them. They're trapped within it. And I love Mark's reading of the chocolate crown, and it's just laugh out loud funny as it's melting down, but they're all in this sort of ecstasy. And then I think the only thing that I'll add about the bread is that it's called the breadless bread plate with unaccompanied accompaniments.
Yeah.
So I think like for the way that I felt so called out by the food critic role, like I also like kind of love like all the ridiculousness of like how the course is named and what's lacking. And this whole idea, right, of how a concept can go too far and just be about hatred and not serving and not being hospitable, and actually communicate something else entirely. So we've got the bread, we've got the s'mores, we've got the burger. Jason, any other scenes we need to talk about?
Well, actually, I want to go back to the bread for a reason, because this is where I felt seen, which was for me when I go to a restaurant. I'm a bigger dude. I require calories, and I love carbohydrates, guys. So I have this terror, Emily, that they're going to forget the bread, or that the bread's not coming. Where is the bread? Or are they going to bring the bread after the food? Because I want the bread now. I need the bread. I need the bread, and I need the oil, and I need the things, just like when I go to a Mexican restaurant or something like that, and they've got the bottomless chips and salsa. Here in Colorado, there's this weird thing where they actually charge you for chips and salsa, and it's heresy. There's $7, and I'm like, it's like, here, no, I need the carbs. So the bread scene is a big deal to me, because I have the abject horror. Sometimes, how sometimes you sit at a restaurant and you're worried that the wait staff doesn't know you're there. Like everybody else around you is getting served, but you're just kind of sitting there on an island. That's a real fear. And the bread scene got that to me. The other thing is this. I adored like the interludes of the chef's table stuff between, like, course one, course two, all the bullshit was, I forget what it was that they wrote on there. It was like Tyler's bullshit or something like that.
Tyler bullshit.
It's brilliant, right? I can watch Chef's Table all day long, like every day. It's like my favorite cooking show. So for them to be able to for them to make that like that, just I loved. That was a thing for me. Um, I really dug that. Can I ask you guys a little bit? I want to come back to the idea of the celebrity chef. Emily, you hit on that a little bit earlier, and I was talking about this, and I was, when Amy and I were away, we were talking about this and this chef and that and so forth. And I was like, look, there were some of these guys who I loved. Obviously, Bourdain was like my dude, right? I
He
think
was
he was like,
everybody's
he
dude.
was everybody's dude, right? He was the chef dude. He was like this dude we call, and the way he would really talk, in his book, in No Reservations, about how you got those prestige chefs, but it's really the guys from Guatemala in the kitchen who were doing the work, right? And how he was really like this champion of a common man. I was like, I loved Bourdain, right? And I love Batali until I find out about Batali's behavior,
Bad
which
man.
horrible, awful,
Which actually
awful,
comes
terrible.
up in this film too, right? That
Right.
you have,
Well,
a woman, chef,
right.
on the team who one of the courses is, man's folly, and she gets the
Mhm.
opportunity to literally stab him because chef, didn't brutalize her, but he approaches her and, she says no, and then he holds it against her and makes sure her career never takes off. And the way she stabs him, it's shot from the side. At first you think it's sort of like a phallic injury, but then it's just in his thigh.
I thought so too.
Right? It would have been more poetic, I think. But then he, would have died too quickly. We have to get to the end. He has to be able to give one more big speech. But no, that relationship to power and how it plays out, right? Like Batali,
Yeah.
should he ever be allowed to come back? Like, is sort of the conversation the food world had.
Batali, no. I mean, not based on what I know about Batali, right? And, you hit on this earlier, like there seemed to be, and I think we're coming back from that, like there was this real glamorization of like Gordon Ramsay's caricature of the yelling cook. And like these guys who are real just bastards in the kitchen. And, who was, the bear does this. Carmi's, McHale, is that it?
Oh, Joel McHale.
Joel McHale's character, right? Who's like, he's like, you should be thanking me for this. I made you by being so brutally awful to you. But there was like this celebration for a while, right, Mark, of like these awful humans who were like screaming and acting like, just real jackasses in the kitchen. And I'm kind of wondering, is it okay to have a favorite celebrity chef? And if so, who is yours?
So Bourdain gets a few call outs in this.
Mm-hmm.
So he talks about how he can carry the cast iron with his bare hands. And that's a story from Bourdain's book, which when he re-released it, he says, actually, this never happened. The guy who,
right.
He's like, that's physically impossible. For those of you who don't know, Bourdain talks about needing a Band-Aid one day in the kitchen. And he says that someone pulls a cast iron straight out of the oven with their bare hands and then slaps him. So that didn't happen according to the 20th anniversary edition or whatever I read a few years ago. They also give him a call. They give him a call out with the John Leguizamo moving on to the presenting version. I think it's actually a call out to Tucci.
I could see that.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to go to Italy and I'm going to eat the pig thing, and then I'm going to say it's delicious, right? But yeah, there's kind of a vacuum in the wake of Bourdain's death that a few people have tried to fill as the presenter / world traveler / pop sociologist. Yeah, I think Bourdain's presence is here and is there. I was thinking about your comment on, because in the book, Bourdain talks about how he doesn't want any of these classically trained people in his kitchen. He wants migrants and immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes me uncomfortable because it does come across like a backhanded compliment sometimes. Like he doesn't want, the white guy that's gone to culinary school because he's going to have his own ideas. Right. And so there's this element of like, the Guatemalan or the Nicaraguan or the Mexican following orders. Right. And that doesn't think for himself. I'm probably putting words in his mouth. And that's something that maybe is something that he wouldn't say again after he started becoming our world traveler sort of person. But I've always been a little uncomfortable with the way he talks about the migrant or the immigrant in the kitchen.
I think you're right to use the language of like becoming about Bourdain, because I actually think like Kitchen Confidential is him representing himself at his worst, right? Like this is the quite misogynistic rock star chef that does drugs and treats people poorly and, is a model of the negative masculinities that we've seen attached to the professional kitchen and to the celebrity chef who's often, right, only imagined as male. And so the way we got to see him become someone else, right, who was more feminist, who was a great global ambassador for the United States, who was humble in how he tried other cuisines, learned about other places, like genuinely tried to engage with culture and people, not just come in as a kind of colonizer to like make content and leave. That I think like that's one of the reasons, right, that like we love him so much and continue to and are so sad that we lost him. There aren't a lot of people I feel confident, right, pointing to, I think the ongoing stories with Guy Fieri are really interesting. A lot of people like, is he the last, good white guy who hasn't done something horrible, who's, a celebrity chef? I think I've always said, he's an apolitical person. And so I don't have a lot of respect for how he doesn't really stand up for big things that matter, even though he's there to feed people when tragedy strikes. And so I think in that way, like Jose Andres is maybe someone I would feel comfortable saying, right? Like with World Central Kitchen, and being distinctly political, right? Like he's been very vocal against the Trump administration from the first administration when he takes his restaurant out of Trump Tower, to how they were feeding people or not in Puerto Rico after the hurricanes, after Hurricane Maria specifically, speaking out in Gaza against Israel, right? When Israel bombs World Central Kitchen workers who are there, who have permission to be there, who are feeding people who need to be fed. I think Jose Andres is pretty incredible. I've only eaten at one of his restaurants. Like I would definitely love the opportunity to eat more of his actual food and to be able to understand sort of his view on the plate and the kind of food that he's creating, but the food politics he represents, the role he's playing in our food world. He was a part of Mochi and Waffles. It was the Obamas produced it. It was a food TV show for children. So I know I've seen him, relatively recently in that. But I think in the framing of your question, Jason, of like should we have favorite celebrities? Should we be seeking out these heroes? There's been really interesting reading, writing, talking just in the last couple of weeks, right, with the horrific unveiling of Cesar Chavez, right, who's been held up as, this incredible, important person for farm workers' rights and for the Chicana movement, and to find out, right, all these horrific things of what he had been doing to women all throughout the movement, that there's this resurgence of this idea that we shouldn't have these heroes, right? We shouldn't hold up this one singular person to stand in for a movement, a moment in cuisine, right? Like Redzepi for Noma, right? Like didn't invent the kind of food that he was becoming famous for either. Like I love, a Southern, like I give my students Edna Lewis, right? I'm like, tell me how what he's doing is different than what she was doing one generation removed, right, from her family being enslaved. So this idea of like no chefs, no masters is something I see in feminist food that I think is really powerful to think about. Like Jose would maybe be the only person. I'm like, yes. But other than that, like maybe this is something we should be questioning altogether.
Can I go back at you on this?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I absolutely, first of all, I love that you just brought in Cesar Chavez in this discussion, right? Because it's like, is there a danger in having heroes? And I'm like, I don't want to give up the idea that we can have heroes just because there's a fallen angel out there, or what we consider to be a fallen angel out there. We just go, that guy turned, like, I was talking to one of my dear friends, Jasmine. She's like, I feel so bad. I've taught this guy. I just taught him. I was like, you taught the man you knew.
Mm-hmm.
Now you teach the man you know. Right. Yeah. And this characterizes like, oh, wow. It complicates the human experience, right? And then now we just talk about it, right?
I think like that's cool about movements, right? Like it's not just one person. And so I think when it comes to food too, we sometimes hold up one person and it tends to be one man for leading the biggest trend, the most innovative work, of, revolutionizing how we think about food. That there's always a kitchen. There always is multiple layers of like thinking about how can we think more broadly and inclusively about what we're honoring, whose labor, whose innovation, whose contributions. Food has been, we've done a lot of this, right? Like holding up stars and giving them awards, and we've created our own monsters.
So there's a person out there I want to talk about, and she's not a classically trained chef. I don't know really how to approach this. To say Padma Lakshmi. I have just this deep respect. And every time she takes a pen to paper, because she just wrote this terrific piece in the New York Times yesterday.
Yeah, I agree. I read it too. Yeah.
What an amazing mind this woman is. And
to be talking about food to defend birthright citizenship, right? Again, to like not stay in your food lane. Like food is political, food is bigger, food touches all of us, food's the whole system. Yeah. And
also for her to really celebrate, to celebrate her sexuality, her womanhood, and do this in this very public sphere. And, I think food culture has largely been like on this level, this old boys club that she has managed to like rise above. And when you look at, say, like her social media or her public facing stuff, she's not just talking about food and culture. She's talking about womanhood. She's talking about being a single mother and raising another young woman, and then writing all into these things. And I'm like, I'm going to take the chance and go, this is the kind of person that I want to follow or emulate. And just in the ways that, like, she's doing the work, and her work comes through food, and she's amazing at this. So I guess that was kind of where, I still want to believe in superstars. I still want to believe in heroes. And for me, she's there. I had written down Jose Andres as well, because, and also there's another person, Daniel Pruitt, who I'm a huge fan. She works under the Meat Eater. She does a lot of stuff with like wild game and things like that. Cause I want to get into this farm to table discussion here in a moment. As well, and that because that's a huge part. Actually, let's just do that now. Actually, I literally have this up next here. Can we talk about farm to table? Like, this is a thing in this film. They're talking about the oysters, Mark. They're talking about like all of these things they've harvested, and they've got the stuff. When does farm to table become a thing in the United States, like at restaurants? For those of us who didn't grow up, on a farm.
Yeah. So again, I think this is part of the story I'm trying to tell in the Bacon book, and that's, we have to keep in mind, and this is obvious when I'm going to say it, but all food was farm to table for millennia.
Right.
Since
Exactly.
the Neolithic Revolution, all food was farm to table food. So farm to table food can't be special until you have an alternative. And we have to keep in mind that for a very long time, people were very thrilled with what the industrial food system could do. Produce cheap food after the Pure Food and Drug Act, safe food, produce quantities never been seen before, produce it cheaply, to do things, the lack of seasonality becoming part of the appeal, right? To get strawberries in January, right? Or, something else out of season. Like it became low class to eat in season and eat locally. So I just want to point that out, that we have to have this like death of farm to table eating before we can have a renaissance of it with, I mean, I immediately go to Edna Lewis and then Alice Waters. But Edna Lewis, I mean, specifically, Edna Lewis does this project of racial uplift amid Johnson's war on poverty, in which people see Black people on TV being food insecure or eating processed food, eating McDonald's constantly. And for her to take a step and say, that might be the reality in a lot of places, but not where I came from, right? She comes from Freetown, town settled by emancipated slaves. And it's a good reminder to think about Edna Lewis, who passed away in the 21st century as the granddaughter of enslaved people, that none of this was all that long ago. Anyway, yeah, so for her, in this context in which Black food was greasy and processed, and if they had it at all, to put abundance and freshness and seasonality forward was really revolutionary.
No, I totally agree. I think the more contemporary, like you're talking about, Chez Panisse and Alice Waters, like that's the 1970s. I think she's largely inspired by Nouvelle Cuisine, right, in France, which is 60s and 70s. And so it's all happening at a moment. So it's interesting to think, right, about the counterculture, about ideas about the land, about connection to it, ideas about nature, ideas about pesticides, the rise of the EPA, existing. Like, it's happening at a moment where nature and our relationship to it is happening in a lot of different spaces. And so thinking about why a resurgence of thinking about food in the way that farm to table does. But I love Mark's point that like this can't become a fetishized phenomenon that you can charge lots of money for until you have a nationalized, industrialized food system that distances you from the actual farm, from the actual land, from the actual animals, and how the food, actually comes to you.
We can't celebrate, farm to table, until we have an industrial food system. And we can't celebrate farm to table until marginalized people are tied more than ever to the industrialized food system. And that's where farm to table becomes the marker of distinction, right? To be
Yes.
able to do that because it's more expensive than what the industrial food system. So it allows us to sort of reconcile our values because we think we're doing something for someone local or we're doing something for the local farmer. And that's great. I mean, I want money to stay in communities a lot and not to just like pass through people's hands. But I think, and this is the new book, Feed the People. If you haven't read it yet, you really need to. We have a lot of, it is kind of like an anti Michael Pollan look at the world.
Mm,
And what we need actually is for like the Waffle House employee to make a living wage.
exactly. I mean,
You
this was
know,
my problem in public health school, right? Like I went there thinking that fruits and vegetables and farmers markets were going to solve the world, and then realized that like, no, we needed a quality education system and a living wage. Like those were the things that like, as much as I believed in food and it was, the center of my public health nutrition education, like it wasn't to what people actually needed. It happens when people have the autonomy to have enough money to live their lives and have the sports to do it.
By the way, I need to interject for a quick second because I am taking so many damn notes as you guys are talking. I am writing down so much stuff.
As I said, you're such a good student.
I learned so much from you guys. And actually, okay, this actually brings up to a really good point because Emily, we started talking about this before we were recording. It's a thing you taught me years ago as I first started reading your work. We were talking about this just before we started, and we touched on it 3 years ago when you were first on the pod. But one of the key scenes in this that kind of drives this story is the dude's got his camera out taking pictures of himself, which is explicitly banned by the chef. Emily, why can't we stop taking pictures of our food?
So I think we've been talking about, the performance of distinction and class status. And so, pics or it didn't happen, is this way that social media creates this expectation of your existential existence, right? Of being able to market and to be able to show others like where you were and what you ate. But I do think there's also a more benign and less negative side of it, that I think the reason that you and I do it is like I'm still using social media like I used photo albums in the analog era, right? Like I want to remember, these lovely meals that I had with friends, these restaurants that I got to visit, the beautiful plating. Like it is artistry on the plate. And so to capture it with your camera and hold it as a memory that you love and then to be able to share, like there can be ways that still creates memories, social bonds, thinking about local food, right? To tag the restaurant, right? And thinking about how we can be supporting the restaurants in our area by showing friends where we're eating, how great the food is, that you should go there instead of Texas Roadhouse, right? Like the top chain restaurant, which has yummy rolls and fine steaks, but thinking about like how we can use our, social media presence in that way too. But I think one of the things I always remembered as we were working on that book was the idea that for some people, the photos can also be incredibly extractive, right? The idea to go to a place, take your photo and get out, and you've gotten something out of it without creating something larger with it or connecting with someone else, some other institution while you're there. And so I think there are pros and cons to it. I think this idea, though, of the chef saying, please don't, like we definitely included that in the introduction to Food Instagram when it came out in 2022. There were definitely chefs in fine dining who found it gauche or who also found it like you're taking yourself out of the experience by wanting to capture and take the photo. My husband kind of hates that I take food photos, so I've had to learn how to do it really, really quickly, right? Like the overhead shot that takes me 3 seconds, right? Like he wants to eat, he wants to, like he wants to enjoy it. Like, please don't do this. I don't get up on the chair anymore to get the perfect angle. When I go out with my food media students, like sometimes it's fun that you're with people who like understand this is a way we're performing our love of food by wanting to take photos of it and share it with each other. But it's very sort of outside of the norm of how we should enjoy it. But I think in this film, right, the idea that like the chef doesn't want you to, he wants it to remain ephemeral. It seems
Ephemeral.
more, yeah, it seems more like him wanting to be able to control the menu, right? It's
Mhm.
his vision. It's his last stand. It's his grand plan, that like all the diners are expected to engage with it only on his terms. And so I think here it's also playing like a different, layer of the kind of control that this chef is exerting over the narrative, over the plot, but also over the meal and the end of the lives of like all the people here. But Mark, what do you think? Why do we keep taking photos of food? You often take photos of your drinks. Like that's how I know you're relaxing. And like we've done our writing group on Friday afternoon, and like you're somewhere, hot and sweaty and lovely, and you have a good drink like in hand.
Yeah, so first of all, I mean, I do that because the drink is something that actually makes me sit still and read because I can't sit still. So if I pour myself a drink that deserves lingering over, I know I can read for like 30 to 45 minutes. And it will also do the opposite work. It will also help me slow down my drinking. So, yeah, I only started taking food pictures and drink pictures because it was one of Adrian Miller, our friend, Adrian Miller's pieces of advice to me as I was trying to gear up social media in advance. So I'm only doing it to sell out. I will.
Oh, that's a deep dive in and of itself, but keep going.
Oh, then it's just content. It's like branded to who you are. Like I write food books. Here are my food photos.
I had lunch with Adrian recently, and he was snapping away. So he was like, "Don't post this until I can post it." I was like, "All right."
Oh yeah, I fully no. So, but I do love doing it for the points that Emily brought up. I love tagging my friends' restaurants and to thank, a place for producing something really cool or really delicious. So yeah, I do that. But yeah, I am also just trying to be seen.
Well, let me ask you this. We get into the fakeness of all of this. Emily, you brought up the cheeseburger earlier. Is that the most honest piece of food in this entire film? Is authenticity? Because we're talking about like the performance aspect. Can food be authentic even if we're performing it?
When you say authenticity, a food scholar gets their wings.
Yes. Authentic to whom?
Okay.
Authentic to one standard.
Yeah, like, I don't like the word honest.
Yeah, like honest, authentic. And I think like authentic, like of course, as food studies scholars, right? This is a constructed term. Like it's used, to create all kinds of divides. It's can operate the way terroir does, is like both something like very real, very historical, in some ways very romantic, but also like a marketing term. That like authentic and terroir can both, sort of operate in that way. And so. I think the idea of authenticity for me now, like also collides with like this social media world, right? Where influencers are able to be influential in part because people perceive them as authentic. When I think like if you're an influencer at all, it's like impossible that you could actually be authentic. You're turning your life into content. Like it's a deeply inauthentic sort of premise of how you're going to engage with the world and turn your life into content. But I think within the film, right? Like, yes, the burger feels the most accessible. It's made with love. I think what I talked about of like the actual cinematography of how it's shot, of what it's trying to communicate. But I think the dishes here, like, I think part of why they're also meaningful is like they are authentic, searing critiques of all these different trends in fine dining and in the food scene, that, was up to 2022 and the 2023 when the film comes out. That I think that's what makes them work. They are authentic representations that are so easy to satirize of what we've seen coming out of these kitchens that are revered, award-winning, and so on.
So I do teach the cheeseburger scene in class. I have seen that one like probably 100 times.
It's so good. American cheese.
2 slices on each one.
Absolutely. And the onion. Oh, yeah. Keep going.
I think the bun is so beautiful. I think the bun is my favorite part of it.
I feel like the bun's a bit thick for that burger, but that's me. Keep going.
I found it hard to believe that he would have American cheese and a
Bun.
soft white bun
Yes.
on the campus of
On
the
hand.
restaurant.
Fair.
Well, it's like a Dungeons and Dragons tote bag. Like the restaurant has everything, right?
We can
And I'm
believe
like,
that.
and I'm like, I know they're paying $1,250, but I'm also like, I'm doing the math in my head. I'm like, food costs, wait staff. I'm like $1,250, and you've only got 12 guests. You're not making that much money a night here. But let's not let that bother us.
So I was, as part of the bacon book, I interviewed a chef friend of mine in Chattanooga, Chef Eric Neal. Also got some shout outs on the new Michelin guide when it came to the US South for the first time. But he talks about like every chef wants to go through the progression of fine dining restaurant to cheeseburger place
Yeah.
to taco joint.
Mm-hmm.
He's completed all three.
I love it.
In Chattanooga, going from his bistro to his Main Street Meats, which has a delectable cheeseburger, and then to his kind of barbecue / Tex-Mex / taco joint. So yeah, I do think there's something, and I mean, you've talked about this in Chef, right? When you did the Chef, there's something about you want to return to the original or what you first fell in love with or the comfort food or something like that.
Which is also kind of what he's making fun of with the s'mores, right? Like he's critiquing how these like industrial food products are understood as comfort food and that they're sold through nostalgia and connections to childhood and family. And so, sometimes as a scholar of consumer culture, like I stand up for like the Kraft American single wrapped in the plastic. I was like, this is also something to take seriously and to understand within the context of people's lives. Like this idea of like what is authentic. It doesn't just mean, right, of like these really quality ingredients that come from a local area and the producer, like the relationships we have with Oreos and all kinds of other foods like are like anthropologically, culturally, like really, really meaningful too. And so I'm never going to side with the mass theorists, right, who think it's just this top down, sort of dupe that we're just falling for it. Like I think those things do still mean something to people. And so when we start talking about ultra processed food and food policy and what should you be able to buy with your SNAP dollars, like these are also like some of the conversations we need to have about our relationships with all kinds of different foods and how they fit into our lives.
I want to ask you this. We're talking about Chef a whole lot tonight. We're talking about this film, which is technically a food, but we'll call it a food film. I think it's food adjacent. It's got a lot about class and all these other things in it. Emily, when you were on a few years ago, we asked you about some of your favorite food scenes. Mark, we've done this is now the third food film. Good Lord, that's hard to say. We've done on this pod. We did Chef, we did Soul Food, and now we've done the menu. Mark, Emily, what are your favorite food films that deserve to be on this podcast? What are your movies that got to be up here?
Well, I met Emily in the wake of the historians at the movies live tweeting of Ratatouille.
That was so much fun.
Did I make you
a
friends?
Food film.
So
You're welcome.
After that movie, I was like, I'm going to be confident and reach out to this famous person.
That's what I do.
And I told her what I was working on, and then sure enough, she ended up being a reviewer and a blurber of the book.
As you can see, Emily's very hard to approach. Yes.
No, I got to say, it is the preeminent history of bacon. Like it is.
So, what were we talking about?
Your favorite food films.
Yeah.
I have a cat named Remy.
So,
because
Ratatouille's on your list.
We thought he looked like a French waiter. He's a tuxedo.
Oh, so cute.
That's the image. That's the content we need on your Instagram, Mark.
Yes, that'll sell books. More cat photos.
Cats sell.
I should have a copy in my hands as of tomorrow, which won't be tomorrow when this airs.
I'm eagerly waiting my copy, sir. I know it's coming. So
yes. Same.
Emily, what do you got? What are your food movies? I know Ratatouille's high on your list.
Yes, I love Ratatouille. I'll actually still stand up for Julia and Julia, particularly the scenes with Meryl Streep where she's portraying Julia Child. Like,
We should
I know
probably do that at some point.
there are YouTube cuts where you can just watch that part of the narrative, which is based on one of Julia's memoirs. You know, my
Mm.
year in France, and so it's really lovely. Like, I quite enjoy that one. Just to my side here is Tempopo. It's a Japanese film from the 80s. I watched that in a food and film class when I was in the gastronomy program at BU. It covers like every element of food, like food and desire, food and childhood. Like it covers everything. It's like in a ramen restaurant. It's really incredible. It's really about like international food films. Like I really like Tempopo. And then I'll say it again. Like when we talked to Chef, I said Goodfellas, and I still completely agree that like that is a food film. There are so many amazing food scenes, from the opening, tracking shot into the back of the restaurant, to the scenes that are the culminating action in the end, of like making the sauce, everything in the prison, slicing that garlic. I think those are three that if you haven't seen those are all really wonderful films.
Can I give you my guilty food movie?
Yes,
because you guys know like Chef is like my number 10 favorite movie. I love Chef. It is one of my comfort films. I love that movie. Burnt. And I'm interested in your thoughts on Burnt because I feel conflicted, yet I can put it on and not think too hard about it. I don't know. What are your thoughts on Burnt?
I watched it once when it came out and remember it didn't hit. Like it wasn't one that spoke to me that I wanted to watch again. If I'm remembering correctly though, it's either Bourdain or like it's someone in the food world who is a consultant on the movie about both like the narrative arc of the chef within it, the food scenes, all of that kind of stuff. I'll have to watch it again and see if it reaches me now. But I remember it because isn't it Bradley Cooper
It's Bradley Cooper. There's Sienna Miller.
Just incredibly likable and wonderful. In most things.
There's some cool stuff because it starts off with him post self-destruction, right? Which we see. It's very
just what you like about Chef.
Yeah, but it's very much
this moment of reinvention. Yeah,
right. He's very much influenced, I think, by the idea of he's a Bourdain-esque kind of guy who is very much a womanizer, a drug user, hotshot, who just burned his career up and then went and did penance for a while. There's the love story, which I don't really think necessarily fits as much, but his desire to get back up on top and like wrestling with like this new kind of food. Like, he's talking about these bags, sous vide was like the thing at the moment. And I still kind of like the movie because you see him like explode in the kitchen on his feet. He's not Emily an entirely likable guy throughout the entire film. He has to have his own growing. I kind of like the movie still. It's not my favorite, but it's comfort food for me. Mark, have you seen this film at all? Have you seen Burnt?
I have not seen that.
I'll give it another go.
There's that, and then there was what I haven't seen in a while. Was it No Reservations with Catherine Zeta-Jones and Aaron Eckhart, which is a remake of a French
German film,
something? Yeah,
I want to dust off Big Night.
What is this?
Tucci, his quality.
Stanley
Ooh,
Tucci
yeah.
and,
you would love it.
Brought this up before. What is this called?
Big Night.
Hold on.
Stanley Tucci and
Shalhoub? Tony Shalhoub.
Tony Shalhoub
plays the brother.
My brothers that own a restaurant.
Yeah. That's really struggling, but makes incredible food. And then across the street, it's almost like Bob's Burgers, right? With like there's the more successful Italian restaurant.
My favorite food.
Love Bob's Burgers. Yep, the Bear, Bob's Burgers. I have a new chapter coming out about lessons in chemistry.
I haven't done the Bear.
I just watched Lessons in Chemistry on the plane.
It's fun. I think there were things of it that I didn't like compared to the book, but it's an interesting adaptation. It just lost some of the joy, kind of.
Okay, I'm looking forward to reading that. To reading this.
No, it was like the book club book of the year. Like every woman I knew read it. It was just so much fun.
Can I tell you? I was reading a book, and Amy had it on her screen, and I was just watching it on the doing the thing where you watch somebody else's movie on the plane. So I was like, "This is good," right?
Yeah, no, you'll like it from a food perspective. My critique is that you'll have to watch for it. So there are beautiful food scenes where she's cooking, and because she's a chemist, right, she's doing it like a scientist. Like she uses beakers and she's empirically testing everything so that it's this perfect kind of like Kenji Brown, right? Of like Kenji Lopez, of like how you would scientifically sort of make the recipes come out. But then when she's feeding this man who's her love interest, it looks like an Instagram shot. shot. They're all shot from overhead. The food is way too beautiful and too precious for sort of for feminist politics as they're written in the book. And then like the shots are like, they look like still Instagram images, even though they're moving. So there's something about the style of it that I just found too modern and too commercial that it lost some of the politics. But the story, no, it was a fun watch and it was a fun read.
Well, let me ask you this, as maybe our final course tonight on this podcast, if you will. I asked you to...
It's going behind you doing the...
No, but like, I wanted to ask you this. You can design a menu, a plate of food, a meal, Emily, Mark, that represents America. What are we having?
So I thought this question was so hard. This is like a final exam question in a food studies course,
you
right?
Can
like,
use it for your
the menu.
Actually,
like, I was just,
if you use that, I will be forever flattered.
I think this is a really, really good prompt, and it's something that like students would have to think about, like really sincerely, right? Of like, what would you serve, and what does it say about you? What does it say about your country? What does it say about your identity? Like, I don't know that I have a really easy answer, because I think the cheeseburger in this film like kind of gets at it in a really interesting way, even though it doesn't encourage us to think about like the role of meat in our contemporary food system and what it means to maybe need to eat less of it as we think about the longevity of the planet, and what it means to continue, loving burgers and having them represent who we are and not wanting to live without them. So I sort of like flubbed on the assignment as like, this is too big and hard, but I thought it was a really, really brilliant prompt. Like anyone teaching food, you could definitely, what is your menu? Like, what would you... Because are we asking, for it to have a concept, for it to have a story, for it to have something that isn't realized until the final course? Like,
it's your show.
I think that's where I got annoyed. Like, I think intellectually, I actually find that premise, like, of the film and of, him as a chef, like, not something to totally throw away. Like, I think food should make us think. I think it can have many layers and sort of go deeper than just it's made with love and it's yummy. But this idea of like a whole theme and like how it all comes together and what does it all represent? Like, intellectually, I found it really exciting. But Mark, did you fulfill the assignment better? What would you have us all eat?
I was thinking about that I would defend I would defend things that get a lot of hate right now. So I would defend
white sauce.
Things like I would on like smoked chicken, man. No, I would defend things like the Oreo and the Dorito.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I would also, so I travel a lot. I live 90 miles from where I work. And sometimes, the like McDonald's cheeseburger, when my blood pressure feels low or blood sugar feels low, I'm just like, it's meant to be eaten in the like 15 seconds after it comes into like, that's what bothered me when Trump served it to the college football team.
It doesn't even taste good in the setting that he's saying.
It's so like I'm thinking about like a cheeseburger within just a few minutes after it comes out. I'm going to defend like the white guy taco, which got so much hate when Walz was vice president. I'm not going to seek out the white guy taco, but if you put a platter of them out, I'm easily eating 10. We might get to 20. And I mean, so I met my wife at wine tasting, and then we went to a Mexican restaurant and got margaritas. And so I'm going to seek out the like corn tortilla and the like al pastor taco. But if there is a platter of white guy tacos, I don't think anything's going to make me think of my childhood more. And so, that's my white guy tacos, Oreo, a bag of Doritos.
I mean, I'm in, Mark, and when you come to Colorado, that may be what we go get, my friend, because you're coming soon.
We have to go to Roaming Buffalo, right? Isn't that the barbecue joint?
Oh, there's several. You, me, and Adrian are going to throw down. I'm throwing down with both of you, like this year, which I'm excited about. Can I give you my option?
Well, yeah. Yes. What would your menu be?
Just gumbo. I feel like gumbo is like the essential. I mean, barbecue is obviously one of those, right? Like I think about like American foods that are uniquely American. We talked about like the cheeseburger earlier and things like that. You don't go to France for gumbo. Like you're not going to find good gumbo in Thailand or whatever. You can find some amazing stuff elsewhere, obviously. But like when I think about like the American story about gumbo being made by this cultural group, completely unique to the United States who lives on formerly indigenous lands. And then like, it's this fusion of like African and local, cuisine and all this kind of stuff. And like, it's so damn good. And you can put anything in gumbo. You can sausage, duck. I've had squirrel in gumbo. I grew up in Breaux Bridge, Louisiana. Believe me, you can throw it in a pot. You can make gumbo out of it. It's the food of the people, and I'm attracted to that story. And it's largely been made by women, but men can make it too. You can serve it in any number of things. Like I think it's like the perfect American
Tiana's
food.
gumbo.
Yeah.
Disney. It all comes back to Disney. Is that the moral of this podcast episode? You too.
To be fair, I do have the Splash Mountain blueprints over here on this wall over here, which is now Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which is outstanding as well.
And Remy was how this all started, right? Like you reached out to me to do historians of the movies. That's how I met Mark. So Ratatouille, like Disney Pixar, like
what's the lightning bug's name in that movie? Because I can't remember. Because I love him, and he's the little Cajun lightning bug. Ray, who's in love with the star. Oh my God. I love Ray. He's so sweet. All right. Final thoughts on this film. Guys,
I'd recommend people watch it. No, I think it's an interesting critique. And I think even though it's a couple years old, it still really resonates as we think about the good and the bad of the fine dining scene and the role that it plays in our food system when it comes to celebrity chefs, social media, critiques, criticism, and thinking about what it means to eat well, right? I love the line actually where the chef says, you've created a world where you wealthy 1% are the only ones who can eat my food, right? Like I created this restaurant that's esteemed and held as the very best, and everything has to be so expensive and so esoteric that you're the only people I get to feed anymore. And like that's part of what he wants to burn down. That like we want to make food that's accessible and delicious and that everybody can understand and enjoy and know what fork to use and have a great time eating it together. And it burns it all down, but like it's still helping us think about those big ideas of the food system that we want and why it's worth fighting for.
Yeah, I think it's really good for thinking about the way we use food as power and who belongs and who doesn't belong. And that's what's really interesting to me about what bothers him so much about Margot. Because you think everyone's telling her she doesn't belong, and you think that's because she's low class and she's out of it, but she doesn't belong because she's not guilty.
Yeah.
And the menu was designed for the undeserving.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am so glad that both of you recommended. I wasn't going to watch this film. I knew of it, but it wasn't on my list to watch. And then I sat down and watched, and I loved this film. It's so much fun. And Emily, Mark, you were absolutely right. This movie gives us so much to think about. And it's just watching it be completely silly and at times, right? It's a fun movie that goes way deeper than maybe you think it might.
Yeah, for sure. Recommend. Watch it with a burger.
Oh yeah, I'm so hungry right now.
I know. Go eat. I'm on Eastern time.
Oh well, guys, I am so thankful to you guys for coming back on the show to talk. I want to have you back on, and maybe not in 3 years. Like I'm ready for you to come back already.
We have to do Ratatouille, right?
Oh, we have to do anything you want. I don't care. You can pick your movie. This is order a la carte on this. I'm trying to figure this out. You can order whatever you want on this. You want a movie? We'll do it. Ratatouille's. If you guys want Ratatouille, we can do Ratatouille whenever you want. I'm down for that because I feel like you guys get to hold that one for the two of you if you want. But guys, thank you so much for being here, for being part of this, however long it's been. This was a blast. Let's do it again.
Would love to.
Thanks for everything you do, Jason.
We try. And that's a wrap here at Reckoning with Jason Herbert. Thank you so very much to our guests, Emily Contois and Mark Johnson. You can find their books attached to this podcast introduction on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you'll see listen. Also on my Substack at jasonherbert.substack.com. And thank you, of course, to our sous chef, our executive chef, Fletcher. I don't know what you are. You're just irreplaceable, my friend. Thank you all to Fletcher Powell for making this show run. And most of all, thank you to you, diners of this podcast, for making sure that it continues on. Thank you for coming back for more and more. Thank you for sharing this show. And thank you for being here after all. So we've got a whole bunch of stuff coming to you next week. come back for another reservation. Sorry about the puns, guys. I love you all. Ciao for now. Bye.